Live, we're going live. It says I'm live. All right. Hello, everyone. We are here today well, I guess we'll start with Jen Lewis. Me and your host, Jen Lewis, and the infamous Mike Long.
Infamous?
Infamous Mike Long.
Probably.
There's already some good questions coming in, which we'll get to in a second. And we want to thank you guys for joining us, first of all. And I see that we have Michael Nolan here with us. Thank you for joining us. And we might as well just get right to it. Michael is asking Mike. He says, I just wanted to be the first to ask a question. Is it true that Mike's brain is filled with beer and he's from Australia?
Yes to the first. The second one gets him permanently banned from asking any more questions.
Wow, Mike. So that was a great start for you. I'm sorry that you're already banned from my YouTube channel. But before you leave, please hit the subscribe button. Anyone who is here, please
subscribe.
Please
never speak
subscribe again. and then please leave. No, I'm kidding. Michael, can you hear us okay? Before you leave, can you let us know if you can hear us okay?
Sound check. I guess
we
not.
don't know. I don't know. I guess not.
Okay.
We'll never know.
Sorry, didn't mean to. But yeah.
All right, let's see. I just want to share this link on Facebook. Now everyone can see my Facebook page. Whoops. No, now everyone can see these. Whoops. No, you can hear us okay.
Sound check.
This is really why I'm here, Mike. I'm Jason's adult supervision, but he's not screen sharing with me. I'm not allowed to help.
Make sure he doesn't share the adult pages that he's also running at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so embarrassing.
I'm going to make sure I don't.
All right, you guys talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back.
Yeah, this is fun. So what are you doing for us today, Mike? We're gonna talk Photoshop, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I'll do a little bit of basic composition rules, essentially. And then if we get a little bit of time, I might do a little bit of skin and a quick trick to make skin look a little bit more real when you're retouching it, and a new way of dodging and burning.
Yeah.
New to me, that I recently learned. So always learning.
Yeah, I'm excited because I'm not.
Don't be too excited.
I get a lot of practice because I Photoshop all of Jason's work that he shoots.
I mean, everyone has their, crosses to bear.
Right.
Yes. He's a big fan of outsourcing to me. So I'm
a big fan of outsourcing. I don't know why I'm doing this. I send all of my stuff to India. So, I'm just figuring this out as I go along.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Sounds like you're the perfect person to teach Photoshop.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do. Outsource it.
They're like, okay, now tell them to do this. Yeah. How's it going, Jason?
It's going good. All right. I think we can get started in a minute.
So what's with the fake background, Jason? What's really going on behind
It's not fake. It's actually real.
Get out.
Yeah.
That looks so fake.
If it was fake,
it's totally real. Everyone thinks it's fake. That's actually a real background.
All right.
Yes.
Mine is an old backdrop that I had made years ago because behind that is laundry and pipes and basement crap. And
I mean, same. I'm in the basement.
Yeah.
I'm in the basement. So I did actually have a nice little setup in our upstairs living room, and it just was too noisy up there with the kids. So it was time to move on.
Right.
So anyway, all right, Mike, thank you for.
Only my mum calls me Michael, and only when she's mad at me.
I am not mad at you, Mike. I want to thank you for being on today, and this is a weekly broadcast that we're going to start doing called Groups Group, and it's going to be a live stream where we have some of our friends come on, teach us some things. And Mike is a photographer based in Portland, Oregon. And he's mostly known for his what's called his Portland pinups, and they're these really, really fun portraits of women, typically in different kinds of scenarios of what's, I guess, important in these women's lives. And they're really, really amazing portraits that I think really bring out the personalities of these women, and they're really, really fantastic. And I've admired his work for a long time. Mike is also a really great teacher, and he's always entertaining to watch. So it's always fun to learn from something, because like as soon as an instructor pulls out Photoshop and a tablet and a pen, I'm like. So it's could happen. I mean, I'm really old, drunk. So it can happen at any point anyway. So anyway, Mike, anything you want to add? I'd like you to kind of intro the Portland pinups, because I think that's an important part of, who you are and what you do, and how you came about that.
Sure. Well, I don't know if you can see, but the girl behind me there, can you see that lady there? That's Cherry Dollface.
Yes.
It's actually it's all her fault, actually. I was a wedding photographer for many, many years. I was trained the old-fashioned way of doing it, probably like Jason was, with film, and you only had 10 rolls of film per wedding, and that was all terrible. But we got through it all, and I was trained to do it with lights and how to pose people and how to interact with people, which I don't think many wedding photographers do these days. You get a camera for Christmas, and oh look, you're a wedding photographer.
Right.
You've been to one friend's wedding and sat at the back, and oh look, I can shoot weddings.
Right.
But
put out the sandwich board.
Right. And I firmly believe that with weddings, you have to interact with the people to get the best from it. And I think that's the same with any portrait photography. So I learned really early on how to interact with my subjects and relax them and joke with them and get them feeling comfortable, so that when you're taking their picture, first of all, they don't really even know you're taking their picture, and you get the best from them. And I bought some new lights to test for weddings. Can't remember what they were. I think I was going from big studio lights to Vivitars or something like that. And I wanted to test them. Put an ad on Craigslist, and Cherry turned up to do the tests, and we went outside and tested the lights, and she said, I'm a pin-up girl, why don't we do some pin-ups? And I went, okay. Went in my studio, and all I had up at the time was a plain white backdrop, and she showed me some basic poses and went home, and I went home and I went, oh, I quite like that. And at the time I was experimenting with extracting subjects from a plain white background and putting them either onto a color or something else, and this was for commercial photography. And I used it on the pin-ups, and that happened. And that was kind of the start of it. And I started just messing around doing it as a side hustle because I liked it. And ladies started saying, can I do that?
Wow.
Yes, you can.
Well,
it's changed a lot over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've been teaching how you do these for a while too. I know you did some tours with Sandy Pooch and some other people, and
Yes, and did you know that today, 7 years ago today, that we were in Chicago, you and I?
No kidding, really?
Yeah.
I don't
remember much about that.
Yeah,
you got me very drunk.
we were pretty drunk that whole time. So a little backstory: we had done Sandy Pooch had done this bus tour across the country, teaching in a bunch of different cities, and then she took some of us on the road with her. And it was one of the most fun things that I've ever done. She brought all these different photographers on, and we would usually fly to that city, and then she would do the education in the evening, and then we would pack everything up and drive through the night, get to the new location, and then start that over again. And I think you did it for many, many cities. But I think I did about 6 of the cities, and I think we went from Chicago to New Orleans to somewhere in Florida, and then we went out to Texas and then LA. But it was a blast. There was like 7 or 8 of us on this bus, and it was a bunch of hooligans. It was like it's literally like the Rockstar bus that people would use on a tour. It was fun for like 15 minutes on the bus. And then it was like, oh wait, this is for real. Like I have to sleep in a coffin while driving through the middle of the night. It was a really weird experience. And I remember I used to get up in the middle of the night and I'd look on maps to see where we were to figure out, how long it was going to be for us to stop in the next. I'd love to do that again someday. Someday we're going to do it again. Maybe not with Mike, but it might just be
maybe
me
if I
on
have
the
a
bus.
chauffeur and I fly everywhere. Although not right now. He wants to fly right now.
Right.
But,
I got text during that tour though, but a lot of them involved various smells, so we're not going to revisit that.
Ooh, it was a stinky bunch of boys. It was definitely a stinky bunch of boys for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, Mike, what are you going to teach us today?
I have no idea. We'll have a look at a little bit of compositing kind of rules, how to make them look a bit more realistic, and the basic ways that you can get from a studio shot into something that's not based in a studio with a different background. Maybe some skin retouching, and maybe some dodging and burning, which is there's several different ways of doing it. I recently learned a trick to do it maybe a little bit easier. So maybe that.
That sounds great.
Okay. Do you want me to take over?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Just sitting there.
We're just gonna sit here. Yeah. Why don't you take over?
All right.
Unless you need a minute, we can talk some more. Okay.
All right. So, do you see my screen?
I do.
Bunch of windows open.
I do. Okay. Yes. Perfect.
So let's have a look at something like this. So this shot obviously wasn't shot at the beach. It was shot in my studio. That's the lovely Satira. And that's, I think, 2 or 3 different background images all put together. Basic rules I see people break, which makes a composite look, composite, whatever you want to say, look bad. Lighting, shadows, and perspective. Now, if you were doing a commercial job for like Apple or, McDonald's or whatever, the composite has got to be perfect. You've got to have the perspective looking absolutely seamless. Otherwise, people are going to say this ad looks fake, even though most of them are. Every single car photograph you see is all fake. It's all, now all the cars are CGI cars and the backgrounds are all plates. So it's all put together in Photoshop afterwards. But you have to get those perspectives looking absolutely right, as if they were both shot in the same plane. Otherwise, someone's going to see something's off. When it's a portrait, you can get away with a little bit of perspectiveness because no one's really paying attention unless you're another photographer going, oh, look, the angle's slightly different. And I ban those people immediately. But if you're the client who's paying for this, you're going to see yourself looking fabulous and think, oh, my God, look, I look like I'm at the beach. So with this one, for example, in the studio, I always shoot with a 50mm lens on a full-frame camera, which is more or less the exact way our eyes see the world.
Right.
We don't have telephoto eyes. We don't have wide-angle eyes. So we see with roughly standard eyes. If you're on a cropped sensor, I believe it's 35mm lens you need to do the same effect, I think.
Correct.
So that, and with the, what's the mirrorless? I don't know what the equivalent of they are. Does anybody know how that translates with mirrorless?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, and it depends on what mirrorless today, because some are more full frame, right? So
3 industry professionals, and none of us know.
I think it's the same as a crop sensor.
Okay, so it's a 35mm lens. Okay. So anyway, if you use that, then what you're seeing in the camera is roughly how your eyes would see the world. So the person in front of you is roughly standard perspective. So then your background should always be roughly the same perspective. Right. If you're taking them yourself, you can ensure that happens. If you're getting in stock photography, which is a lot of what I do, then that's not always going to happen. I would imagine that some of this background image is probably a wide angle lens. You can alter that a little bit in Photoshop. But, as long as when you put the person on the background, it looks like they were supposed to be there, you've got to get the scale right. Now I look at this one, she looks a little bit short compared to those posts, but, it's fake, so who cares? But you would want to shrink that background slightly. But if you shrunk the background slightly, then the boards on her feet might be too small. So maybe it's about right. And you've got to look at things like in the sand, you can see a few footprints. So you've got to look at those for guidelines of how big that background should be for how big she should be in the shot.
Right.
So the second link, which follows on from that, is where the lighting is coming from. So if you look at, I've built a style, it's very much the Portland pinup style that's backlit in some way. So obviously we've got big lights at the front, light in the model. But I also backlit them to get a kiss of light on the shoulders and on the hair, because I really am drawn to images where you've got some kind of backlight and front light as well. I think it's much more dynamic. So you can see in the background, in the sky, the sun is going down behind her in that sky. So it would give a glow behind her, which would give her a little bit of shadow in front of her, not just behind her where you're lighting. I keep looking over there, sorry, because I know that I can see you over there on that screen, but you're really there. Sorry. So in my studio, I use 4 lights. So I use 2 big lights at the front, which have got soft boxes on, and I use 2 lights at the back, which have got strip boxes on, which gives me shadows front and back and just slightly to the sides.
Okay.
And then I can remove those as needed, depending on where the light source is going to come from. But in general, I like to have a light source appearing as if it's behind the person. And if that sky was completely blue with no light source behind her, it would look a little bit weird because she's got great big kisses of light appearing to come from behind her. That would mean it would look kind of fake.
Right.
To get around that, I often put like a light glow behind her in the background, and then it looks like the sky is just lightening and darkening, and then it fits in. The whole goal with a composite is to sell that it's shot at the same time. So perspective first, getting your shadows and lighting right, and then you've got to match the color and tone and contrast of both images. So if you're using one background image and your person is shot and lit in a studio 9 times out of 10, so they're going to be perfect. You know, the contrast and color is going to be absolutely perfect. Your background shot could come from some stock site, maybe shot in different lighting conditions, maybe different color temperature, and that's going to immediately stand out as being very, very different to the person you're putting on top. So you can do a few things there. You can alter the background itself, change the color tone, change the contrast just on the background image until they match a little bit. I do that sometimes. Probably did that with this background image. I probably made it a little bit more golden. She's got a golden tone to her. That brought those a little bit more in line. The best thing you can do is once you've got your composite in place, stamp the whole image, and I'll show you stamp in a minute in Photoshop, and then do something to the whole composite that's yours to give it a color tone, add some grain to it, increase the contrast so that it all matches and blends in together. And that's what most people don't do. I see a lot of composites where they've just cut somebody out, slapped them on a background and called it done. And that is very, very clear that that is exactly what they've done. And hair when you're doing, and also clipping the person out and making it look great. Hair. So let's look at that. Let's go into.
That's what I always struggle with when I'm trying to.
Hair?
Especially, this is a great example because her hair, I would struggle with that so much.
So it's really easy to do that, Jen, and I'll show you. So the first thing to note is that I'm shooting on a white background, and I do that with all hair colors except for blondes. With blondes, I'll use a black background. Because then there's a trick to how you can extract the hair. It's much easier to get blonde hair off of a black background than it is off of a light grey background because they're very, very similar in tone. So there's loads of different ways you can extract subjects in Photoshop. There are some automated tools that Photoshop has. There are plugins that you can use. People use green screens and then just do a color range and they say that's wonderful. And if you're doing sports and you're doing 800 kids and you've got to get them all dropped out of the background, it's probably the best way of doing it, honestly. But when you're doing individual subjects and you want a magazine quality result, all of those things that you can use that are automated have some kind of issue, some kind of problem that needs fixing later on. So in my opinion, you may as well just do it right in the first place. And there's really only one way to extract people properly. The first thing you need to do is create a clipping path around any hard edges. So you use the pen tool, which is, I wish you'd see it's over here. Pen tool. Leave all the settings as standard as Photoshop comes. Zoom in a bit. And I like to rotate my canvas like a piece of paper. You can hold down R on your key, R. R. And then you can rotate your canvas because it makes it easier to use. And then you just click a point, move your, I use a pen, not a mouse. Very important when you're doing retouching. If you don't have one of these, get one of these. They're all good. I use the Wacom, I don't know, it's 5 years old now, but the black one. And then you just click another point and drag, and you can see it gives you these bendy lines. And then when you lift off, that's where the curve's going to be. Click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. And you do that around your whole image. And you can get away with things like this. So this little nub here, this bump, can you see that little bump there? If you were to use a color extraction method or a select subject method, it would grab that bump as well. Now, do you really need that bump, or can you just make that shoulder look a bit more nice and round like that? So this is how you go around the edge of the image. Now, stay inside the person's line, not outside. And, you know, you don't need to be completely 100% accurate because, again, we're not doing an ad for GQ. We're doing a portrait for somebody who paid you lots of money, hopefully.
Right.
So you would go around the entire image like that. And in the spirit of all infomercials, here's one I did earlier. There's the path.
Wow, you're so quick.
I know. So the reason that's like that is because I actually failed myself and resized the image earlier. It's been a long quarantine. Give me a break.
Long quarantine.
It has, definitely.
I should have dated this video for years to come. So there's the clipping path around her. And you notice in the hair, I haven't gone around each individual hair. There's no point doing that. We're going to do the hair completely differently. All right?
Okay.
Now, once you've got a clipping path, you just click on the path here, And then down here in the middle of the bottom of the clipping path palette, there is a little dotted circle. And that's going to create a selection, which is how we're going to make a mask for this image. So on a Mac, you hold down the Option key. On a PC, I think it might be the Alt key. Is the Alt key the opposite of Option on PC? Don't know.
Go buy a Mac.
Don't use PCs. Everyone uses Macs, right?
Mac.
Yeah, right. Good.
Right.
You hold down the
Go buy a
Option key.
Mac.
Did you say don't buy a Mac?
I said go buy a Mac.
Oh, go buy a Mac. So make sure you're highlighted on the path. Hold down the Option key and click on the little dotted lines, and it says make selection. And it gives you the option to feather it a little bit. I always do a 0.5 feather. That's on the images that I'm creating. Mine, I've got Nikon D810, so they're, I can't remember how many megapixels, too many. That's about the right feather for that size of image. Fiddle around with it. You don't want anything too big. You just want a slight little soften on the edge. Click OK, and you get the marching ants. That's now a selection of the body of that girl. That's Nikki, by the way. She's my hair and makeup stylist and my on-set helper. Then you go to your layers palette, click on the layer, and just hit the mask button, which is that one. Boom. She's now extracted from the background with a very nice haircut, which is probably how most ladies are looking these days during quarantine, I would imagine, if they're cutting their own hair. But we want to do a better job of that hair. So we're going to zoom in a bit. So, now I want to hide the mask, so I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click on the mask, and that turns it off. And to get it back, you just hold down the Shift key and click it again. That's how you can turn your mask off and on. Now you notice that the mask is still highlighted, but I want to work on the pixels. So I click on the layer. So the pixels are now highlighted. Now we are going to use the magic color range. And we're going to click on the background, this white area here. I like to click invert so I can see it a bit better. And you can see that it's missing quite a lot of this white. So you just hold down the Shift key and click in certain areas until you make it all go black. And all we can see is this hair. Okay? You can mess around with how much you're taking or how little. I generally find somewhere around 30 or 40 gets most of it and leaves enough hair intact.
That's cool.
And then you click OK. Now you've got the marching ants around the hair. So what it's doing is it's now created a selection around that hair based on the differences in color, which is why if you've got black hair, you want a white background. If you've got blonde hair, you want a black background. Red hair, white seems to work pretty well because it's still quite a contrast between the two. Now we want to work back on the mask again. So this time we're going to hold the Option key or Alt on a PC and click the mask. And that shows us, no, do it again. There we go. That shows us just the mask. So now we can see the mask itself, the white and black. And for those of you who aren't familiar with, I know I'm going pretty quick here, but we're only on for 17 hours today, right, Jason? That's
correct. Correct. It's a clipping path marathon.
This could be way too easy for some people. Like all Photoshop tutorials are either way too easy for some people, and they're going, "Come on, hurry up!" Or some people are like, "What's a mask?"
Well, I mean, generally with stuff like this is you should be watching, right? You should be watching what Mike is doing, and then rewinding this video 1,000 times until you get it right. Yes. Yeah.
So a mask on a layer is like if you've got a piece of paper in front of you and you cut a hole out of the paper and put it on top of a picture. That's what a layer mask is. So the hole in the paper is white on a layer mask. White reveals, black conceals. That's how a layer mask works. So all this white area here, if I flick back, that's what you can see. And the black is all being covered up. Okay, everything behind her is being covered up. So that's the essentials of a layer mask. And you can use those on individual layers. You can use them on groups. You can use them on adjustment layers. They're fantastic. So get into using layer masks. They're the best thing you can use for high-end retouching. So we've now got a selection. You know, these marching ants aren't affecting the image itself. All they're doing is giving us some kind of constraint to work to. Now what I'm going to do is paint inside this area. So I'm going to choose a nice big hard brush. My opacity and flow are 100%. My color is pure white, and I'm just going to paint. And it won't go outside of those dotted lines because that's constraining it. I'm just going to paint where all this loose hair is. Okay, like so. Now I'm going to do Command D to deselect that. Go back to the image, and now we've got hair. Now that's not bad. That's a good starting point, but you're still going to see some very jagged edges around that. But Photoshop has a really good way of refining that. And like everything to do with Adobe, the old way is way better than the new way. So the way to get, they keep refining stuff and making it worse. So and making it crash all the time, which this crashed 3 times this morning, by the way. So if it suddenly disappears, it'll be Adobe. So what you want to do is if you go up to select, there's this thing called select and mask. Don't do that. Before you click select, hold down the shift key. Now go down and hit select and mask, and you'll get the old version of Refine Mask, which is way better than the new version. So now you've got, can you see my cursor? It's a little round icon.
Yep.
So don't change any of the settings. All you're going to do is paint around the edge of the hair like this, where all the fluffy bits are. Everybody loves fluffy bits.
Mm-hmm. But I think you have to have a British accent to.
I can get away with saying almost anything, and nobody questions it. And then once you've done that, now I haven't lifted off my mouse at all, but once you've done that, just let go. It'll think for a second. Now when I click OK, brand new Mac, why is it taking so long? Photoshop. And then I can show you the mask. You see how now it's all feathered and soft and lovely. And it's gone, it's not just black and white, it's now fading into greys a bit and softening. Again, it's not 100% perfect, but it's way better than just doing a color range on green or using the extraction tools. Now we've got a hard edge for her, a soft edge for that. So if I now put a color behind her, let's do that and put it behind her. You can see all these edges here, how bad they are?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a lot of people get wrong with hair. So there's 2 things you can do here, all right? With dark hair, we're going to use a multiplied layer. With blonde hair on a background, you would use a screen layer. Both the same method. We're going to duplicate Nikki. So I'm just going to bring her down here. And on this one, I'm going to delete the layer mask. There she is. I'm going to set that to multiply. And on this one, now you can just gently paint out the mask around those edges, ever so gently. And all those wavy bits disappear. Obviously, you would take
fluffy bits to wavy bits.
Fluffy bits to wavy bits. Obviously, you take a lot longer refining this and go in, and you would paint very gently and very lightly. With the Wacom tablet, it's really easy to put no pressure. And because that background's not completely white, you might also want to lighten it a little bit. So I just do some curves. You can see this is where true white would be, this point here. So I'm just going to bring that into there. And that gets rid of any decontamination in the background. And that's how you would do hair with a solid color behind her. Okay?
Nice.
Wow.
Did everybody follow at home so far? Everyone's going, need some more drugs, man.
Well, I think that pretty much goes with saying in general.
Yeah.
However, there is another trick. And this is something that this came to me like, I've been doing this method of extraction for like 15 years. Mm-hmm. And something that came to me very early on, because I liked the backlights, let me go back to what's my history there. A lot of this issue with the wavy bits in the background, and you can see all this scummy stuff around here, is because the background is being lit from the lights behind, which I wanted because I wanted the shoulders lit and the edge of the hair lit. So what I figured out is, rather than doing the multiply layer, what I like to do is have, now where is it? It's over here. Can't find it. There we go. I like to put a vignette around the back of my subjects. Let's just get rid of that. Just going to do this quickly and not tell you what I'm doing, and then I'll show you. Something like that. And that's a very Portland pin-up style. You'll see anything where I've got a coloured background, you'll see there's usually a white glow around the head. Now, if you look at her hair, you can't see all those scummy bits. Dead quick. All it is a white vignette. So it's a white layer. Pure white layer, okay? Mm-hmm. And the mask is just a gradient circle. So it's allowing white light through, gently gradiating outwards so that the edge of the circle is black. It's like a round vignette, basically.
Right.
And it's controlled by the opposite mask to her. So that's allowing her through, and all the pixels of her are showing through. The spotlight is only affecting the background. I know that blows some people's minds sometimes, but it's like having, if you think back to film days, it's like having, when you used to composite film on top of each other, some would mask out other bits. Right. So the glow is only affecting the area outside of her mask. So the masks kind of butt up against each other.
Uh-huh.
So occasionally you might need to go in and just, if you can see around the edge of her face here, for example, where they butt up, because they're so tight fit, it gives you a little bit of a black line. So on the white mask, you can just gently paint in edge there and refine it.
There to get the edge back.
Yeah, and then you get a nice soft edge. And if there are any hard edges, you can just allow the white to show through slightly more. But that's the basic idea. Now, if you were using a blonde-haired lady, you can do exactly the same thing with the white because it would still show up. And the black background, you just, instead of, as I increase the white to pure white, you would increase the black to pure black. And again, it would disappear.
Got it.
Everybody following?
Yeah. I'm going to be
That's usually like a half-day lesson whenever I used to do like seminars and stuff. But again, like I said, they're recording this. It's going to be on YouTube forever. Everyone's going to rip it off. So you can just follow my. Don't do the white thing behind her. That's my thing, all right?
Yeah.
And I usually then add to that with a black vignette just to close down the edges. I like that too. That's my style. I do a dark vignette to close in the edges and a white vignette, and that gives me my Portland pinups coloured background look.
Right.
And the big dark secret is I do those two vignettes on almost everything I do. So even if it's a picture of, where's Sathira from earlier? She's got a little vignette behind her head, but you can't really see it because it's just helping sell the fact that sun is going down behind her. But I did exactly the same thing with the white vignette around the back of her head. They all get that because it really helps fiddle in these hairs. And on top of that, you can add, like I said, a multiply layer to get those straggly bits.
Right.
That really helps too.
Right.
Especially if you're just doing a simple color and you don't want the white bobble around the head because that's it can be distracting. If you just duplicate the layer and put it underneath and set it to multiply, you can then get all those straggly hair bits. Much easier to do it.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's basically how you would extract someone and put them somewhere else.
Right.
Okay, wherever that may be. So I could now put a picture behind her. Do I have one handy? Where's Dropbox? Shouldn't show you my stock, really.
Well.
Main stock. We're going here. 4,429 stock images that I've bought people, paid for.
They're all paid for.
Yeah,
I can't read anything on that.
Do not go to Google and search for an image and then just put it in your picture. Okay, I know it's tempting to do it. You can't do that. You have to license stock images. There are some sites that give you free images, but you have to agree to their licensing deals. Best way of doing it is sign up with the big bad brother Adobe. They've bought all the stock libraries that were on the planet, and they have everything. I think it's $30 a month or something, but you get 20 images. So as you can see, that's why it all says Adobe stock here, because that's where I buy it from. So there you go. Let's put that behind her.
Oh, I'd like to be there right now.
Yeah, wonder if it's Miami by the look of it.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I would love to. Let's go.
Go. And there you go. Now she's waiting to spank somebody because they're out social distancing. Oh, that's a great shot! Here we go. I'm going to do that later on. Stay at home.
Wear your mask. Where's your mask?
Wear your mask, or I'll spank the crap out of you. That's great. So there you go. Now the perspective is almost right. She's probably a bit too big in that image because that's probably a telephoto lens and everything's compressed.
Right.
But that's how you would do that. Okay.
Cool.
Let's move on. Is there do you two have any questions about what I just did? Probably a million.
Jen?
No, I mean, I'm going to watch it back later and pause it. And Jason doesn't care because I do all his retouching. So
you should know all this, Jen.
I do know a lot of this, but I've tried it. I like what you showed with the hair though, because I do always have that issue where it just it's not clean. It's not a nice clean. I like your solutions. That's really cool. Right.
And it doesn't matter which, there's tons of plugins you can use. There's filters that say, oh, we're the best extraction method. They all give you crap hair, all of them. And if you use a green screen, you're going to get especially on different color skins, you're going to get rough edges because to the plugin, it might look slightly green. If they're wearing any green on their clothes, you've got to fix that. So just forget about it all. And the green gives you a green, especially on blonde people, it gives you a green tinge, which you've got to fix as well. Right. So greens, I've tried green screens. I keep trying. I've tried one again recently. I'm like, no, they're crap. So
yeah,
in my opinion, no flame wars.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's
I use shoe on gray, or I I just am one of those, like, I'm just going to shoot them in the scene because that's the only way I know how to do it.
Right.
So let's go to the.
You can do that too.
Well, I mean, I think with any of these techniques, if you learn how to do it properly, right, you're going to get it. You're going to do a better job. It takes a little bit of extra time. Taking the time to learn how to do it properly is always going to be the better way. Now, granted, there's always going to be a faster tool to do something,
right?
Like, you know, all these plugins and stuff like that, and that may be fine for, you know, the limited things that you're doing. Maybe there's some, you know, high school senior portraits that just need to be done quickly. Sports team photos, stuff like that would be fine. But when you're doing something that's so personal, especially with, you know, women in these portrait scenarios, you want to do the best job you possibly can.
Right. And I think that for me, being trained, I was trained to retouch before Photoshop was even invented. And we used to use big industrial retouching machines called Cytex. They were from Israel. They cost $1 million each. Did you use Cytex, did you, Jason?
I never used a Cytex machine, but I used to, you know, hang around with some of the people that did it and always be like, wow, this is ridiculous.
It was pretty intense.
It was very intense and expensive.
Yeah. It's like $1 million for each one.
Yeah.
And with Cytex, there was only one way of doing each thing, no matter what it was. So if it was color correction or a gradient, or clipping somebody out of the background, there was only one way of doing it. So everybody got trained to do the same way, to the same level, and everybody could do it. With Photoshop, there are literally 78,000 ways of doing each individual thing. And everybody thinks their way is the best. And that, you know, whatever way works for you is definitely the best.
Your way is the best, right?
Of course, that's what I always say. Everyone's method is the best except for mine, which is the absolute best.
Yes.
But the reason I use this method and use it over and over and over again is because the more you do something, the better you'll get at it. And if you change the way you do something and then you have to flick back to doing something else, you're probably going to miss a step or do something wrong. So consistency is usually key. By doing it this method, I can get really quick at clipping people out, especially as the bit you saw me do first of all, the clipping path itself. I really do send that out to India. They're so cheap. I think I pay 50 cents an image. They take a couple of days and they send them back with a clipping path done. That's just, why bother doing that? You know, it's not, that's painful and tedious, and I won't let anybody do the actual retouching of my work. I want to do it. Jason, do your own work. But but the clipping path
I'm all about outsourcing anything.
So I get all the clipping paths back, and then they've taken care of that part. Then I go ahead and do the hair and everything else as far as the extraction goes. It's much easier. Lost my train of thought there.
All right.
Happens when you get old.
My camera battery is about to die for some reason. I don't know why. So I'm going to disappear in a minute, and I'll come back if I disappear. But I can see there's a red flash. There's a red battery warning going on right now, and it's going to go. But we'll see how far. I'm on the edge right now. Yeah, Jen will take over.
Yeah, I'll be there with you, Mike. I want to see you do your skin retouching that you're
okay, let's do some skin retouching. All right.
Yeah.
So,
skin retouching.
All right. So what I've done,
I'm gone.
Let me turn these layers off so that all we've got is Nikki. So actually, let me just undo what I just did. And then I can show you. This makes it much easier. Ignore what I'm doing. Okay, so right now I've got a layer, which is Nikki, with a layer mask. Now, all my retouching I like to keep in a group, kind of like a folder. Okay, think of groups as folders.
Right.
So I'm highlighted on Nikki's layer. I'm going to hold Command G on a Mac. Figure it out for a PC. Yeah. And that creates a group, which is a folder. So I'm going to call that Nikki. And the layer mask is still on Nikki herself, but I'm going to click and hold on that and drag it up to the folder. And now the layer mask is on the folder. So everything within that folder will now be affected by that mask. So if I put that color layer up in that mask, it's only affected by that group and that mask. Okay. Okay. And if I put the color under her, she's now only affected and the layer is covering everything. Okay. So that's that. And all my retouching I tend to do in a group so that it only affects the subject it's intended to. I haven't got to worry about edges or going over something or, bleed outs or anything like that. I'm only going to affect her. So skin retouching, again, there are tons of different ways of doing skin retouching. The one I use quite a lot is something called frequency separation, which we're not going to go into here because that really is to show you how to actually build your own action, how to do it. It would take hours. Well, it doesn't take hours, but it's complicated. It involves mathematics. What you're essentially doing with that is splitting color from detail. And that way you can blend the colours nicely and then slowly retouch the detail and get skin looking absolutely amazing. I've seen people overuse it and make it look crap. But I use that fairly frequently, especially on the skin like Nikki. She's got a lot of, I think she's got bronzer on here, which I keep telling her not to use because it's a pain in the ass because it shows up in every single pore. Nikki! If you're watching, don't do it.
Nikki!
Oh, he's back!
I'm back.
And she's got a lot of different pore structers going on. So we've got, everybody's got them. We've all got different lines going in different areas and pore structures that look different over the entire shape of the face. And we want to keep some of that. But one of the big things that, especially if you're working in beauty, people want to look better. That's why you got to makeup artists. That's why you use concealer and different things on your face, because you want to hide some of those pores, but you still want to look natural. You don't want to look like Kardashian. You want to look, I'm aiming to get sued at some point in my life. So yeah. So there are plugins you can use that soften everything. Some people say you can Gaussian blur stuff. There are filters. And again, like everything, yes, they do a somewhat good job, but they're all going to need fixing. So just do it properly. In the old days, when before we had digital and before we had anything like that, where they had actual prints, retouching was done with airbrushes. That's how people retouched pictures. You would gently spray the right colours over areas to smooth things out or change things. That's how retouching was done. So that's how I still essentially do it. I'm going to gently airbrush over her skin. So first thing I'm going to do is create a new layer over the layer of Nikki. So just new layer. Let's call it skin. Now at the moment that's a completely blank layer. It's doing absolutely nothing. Okay, it's not affecting Nikki. There's nothing on it. Everything I draw on that layer, if I just do black, you can see it just draws straight on top of her. And oh my God, I've ruined the image. But this is non-destructive editing, so I can just turn that layer off and it's gone. Okay, this is why you never retouch on your base layer, because if you mess something up and don't see it and go on for 3 hours, you'll never be able to go back and recover what you've done. Always retouch on new layers above your base layer. You can turn them off, you can turn them on, you can mask them, you can delete them. Much easier. So here's how you.
You must have known that Matthew's here.
Oh,
so
Matthew.
The body's in the house.
Brother from another mother. How you doing, buddy? He's just here to make jokes, probably. I bet he's drinking right now. What is it? It's 4 o'clock. Through at 5 o'clock in Minneapolis.
I think it's same as Central Standard Time, so it's 3:45. It's early enough. It's Memorial Day weekend.
He's drunk already. Yeah. So,
I hope so.
I wish I was. So here's how I retouch. Here's how we retouch. I do on skin. This is one of the first methods I learned. I still use it a lot. First thing you do is grab a soft brush. So like a soft round brush, the ones that come standard with Photoshop. And you can change the sizes. Get off. You can change the sizes on these. I'm using the Control and Alt or Option key to just drag my brush up and down. It's how you change the size. I'm going to change the opacity to 40% or so. And remember, I'm using a pressure-sensitive pen as well. Right. So even if I lightly press, it's not going to be at 40%. It's going to be like 1 or 2%. You don't want to hit this like a charging bull. You want to go very, very gently. And we're going to build up layers of color. One of the biggest problems with skin is not necessarily that it needs smoothing out as such. It's just there's tons of different colors in somebody's skin tone. If you look at most people, they've got yellows and pinks and greens and blacks if they've had a bad night. They've got lots of different colors in their skin tone. And we want to even those out a little bit. That's the number one goal with this. So on this layer, you're going to use your Alt or Option key. And if you click somewhere, you'll pick up the color of where that is. You can see it's changing that ring color. Depending on where I'm clicking, that's going to pick up that color. So start somewhere like here and pick up that color and gently start brushing. And what you're doing, you probably can't see it much because it's going to be really, really gentle, but you're picking up color and brushing. Picking up color and brushing. And this is exactly what the old timers used to do with prints and real airbrushes. You would gently build up layers. And anyone who's done any painting with airbrushes knows that's how you should paint with airbrushes. You don't just go and whack on one big load of color. You gently build up layers. And now this can be time consuming. It's also quite zen. You stick on some podcasts, listen to the group.
Yes, something new every week.
Something new every week. Learning how to do skin retouching.
Something new every week. You can watch.
And you're building up layers.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, because I've been doing this slowly, you probably haven't even noticed anything's happened. But if I select just the skin layer, you can start to see areas of color, okay, building up. So when you turn it off and on, you can see how it's gently starting to soften the skin.
Yeah.
All right. And the more you do that, you can go nuts with it. You can go really mental. You know, if I now set my brush to 100 and do it, you'll see. All right. That's what you're doing, essentially.
How much are you affecting the texture of the skin when you do this, Mike?
Good point. So you are actually affecting it quite a lot. And the more you build up, the more and more it will go smooth and plasticky. And I don't know if people are aware of this, but our eyes naturally see with noise in them. There's noise in the world. And if you want to test that out, go into a dark room at night, close your eyes and then open your eyes, and you'll see little speckles. And you know, the darker you get, just like a camera on a high ISO, those are noise speckles. That's what how we naturally see the world. Now, in a bright, normal day, our eyes resolve and generally you don't see any speckles, but that's in life. And a lot of problems that people like Pixar had with their early movies was that they made things ultra smooth. Like all their characters were ultra smooth. And it didn't look realistic. And they figured out that we've got to make this look less good, essentially. We've got to make it look a bit more rough and ready and real. And they started adding grain to their characters, which is why they now look much more realistic. And that's the step we're going to do next. You've got to add back some noise to the layer that you're working on so that it kind of matches the underlying, you know, because even though there's not much digital noise in this because it was shot at ISO 50 or whatever, there is grain in her and there is a little bit of noise and there are pores and there are texture. As you said, that's, you know, everything's got texture and you want to kind of replicate that a bit. So assuming that you've done the whole face, so if I turn it off and on, you can see we're starting to get a little bit smoother. And you can go over the whole body and you can use that to reshape where you want to, reshape shadows. So suppose this shadow under her chin, you wanted to look a little bit stronger and more defined. You just pick up the dark and gently brush
it back in.
Dark under there and then maybe continue that highlight down her jawline a little bit. You can do whatever you want, okay? The highlight on the nose, I like to... all fingers. It's really cold in my basement today. My fingers are... they've got shrinkage. Anyone who doesn't get that is no longer a friend. Okay, so now assume that you've gone over the whole face and you've made it look lovely, but it's plastic. Right. So now what you want to do, we're going to add some noise to it. So you could just go filter noise, add noise to that layer. But once you've done that, it's set on those pixels and you then can't go back and edit those pixels without messing up the noise that you've done to it. So we want to be as non-destructive as possible for everything. So I'm going to create another new layer. And this time I'm going to set the mode to overlay and fill it with neutral gray. Okay? And click OK. Now there's a gray layer there, but it's not doing anything. It's not affecting the image in any way at all right now because it's set to overlay. When you have 50% gray and set it to overlay or soft light, it doesn't affect anything unless you paint black or white on it. Now, that's a traditional way that we've done dodging and burning in the past. If you paint white on it, it'll dodge the image. If you paint black on it, it'll burn the image. But we can use that to add some noise. So we're going to go filter, noise, add noise. I like Gaussian and monochromatic. And then you can adjust the size of it.
Cool.
Adjust the size of it to whatever you want.
Cool.
Obviously, that's maybe a bit too much. Keep it small.
Look you're going for.
Yeah, keep it small. Somewhere around there is what you want. And click OK. But now what you've done is given grain over the whole image, which you don't want. So what we're going to do, and this one sometimes freaks people out, we're going to clip this to the layer below it. So using the Alt or Option key, you're going to go in between these two layers. And when you do that, you see the cursor change to a little arrow in a box. See that?
Yeah.
Click. Now that layer that's marked, I'm going to actually change it to grain. Let's change the name to grain so everyone can typing. It's only affecting the skin layer that I brushed. It's not affecting the underlying layer. It's only putting grain on here, and we can see that. If I just turn that off and on, you probably can't see. You can see it's only affecting those areas where I painted, and it's too much right now. So we're going to drop that opacity down to like 30 or 40%, just a little bit. Now we're adding a little bit of texture back into those areas, You can refine that, refine the size of the grain. A good way of doing that, and I'm not going into this, if you make this layer a smart object, you can affect the filter again and again and again without having to redo it. Look up smart objects. Maybe Jason will have me back and we'll talk about smart objects. So now you can paint on this skin layer wherever you want, and you can see the grain is going wherever that paint is, and only where that paint is. Okay, that looks good. It's a nice look for Licky. Probably not politically correct, so let's get rid of that. So that's the basics of skin retouching. Use a very light, gentle brush, pick up the color you want and how you want to manipulate your image, gently brush and add some noise to it to make it look more realistic. Now, the noise part, the grain part, you could even make your own action to do that. I've got one. I've got an action that sets up the base blank layer and a grain layer on top of it already, so I don't have to worry about it. I just hit the action, start painting, and usually I can get around an image like this in like 5 minutes because you get quicker brushing. I don't like to stick in one area at one time because when you do that, you're going to overwork that area. Do quickly, move on, maybe go back if you've got a wrinkle you want to get rid of. And the great way of doing it this way, rather than on your base layer, is you can put a mask on this. So if I put a layer mask on this, it's all white right now, so white reveals, black conceals. Right. If I now paint black at a very low opacity on a few areas, you can bring back maybe a few little wrinkles or dimples here and there so that you're not going quite as nuts. See how that layer mask is just allowing that little dark area back?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can change that at any time because it's a layer mask. You can get rid of the layer mask. Your retouching is still there. Everything's all intact. So that's how I do skin retouching.
I have another question, Mike.
No, I'm out of answers. What?
At what point, because you mentioned frequency separation, that's what I normally do for skin.
Right, yeah.
I do frequency separation and dodge and burn. So at what point do you do your frequency separation? Do you do that instead of this? Do you do that before this or after this or what?
So I switched. This was my number one skin retouching method for many years. I switched to frequency separation as the number one method 4 or 5 years ago. I now use both in tandem. I do frequency separation first to really even out the colors. But I don't do much in the way of when you look up frequency separation, or when I come back and do it here later, you'll see that you can do a lot of work, especially on things like wrinkles. You can get rid of wrinkles really quickly with frequency separation, but it's also really easy to make them look so fake. So I tend to not do too much work on the detail on skin. I do use it a lot for clothing. Like if you've got big wrinkles, frequency separation can get rid of that in minutes. But for skin, I do it to even out the colors and make it look smooth. Then I'll probably go in and do this over the top just to finesse a few of the wrinkles or the dark areas, or bits that maybe the frequency separation is a bit too. Frequency separation is like a mallet. This is a bit more like a little tiny hammer. Little tiny hammer.
Okay, that makes sense. I was curious because, like I said, like what you did, like kind of painting her skin. I do that same thing with frequency separation. Like that's my go-to.
Yes. So on the color layer. Yeah.
Do that. Yes.
Now, if you're painting on the color layer, consider using the mixer brush.
Okay.
And set all your settings at 100%, and just try the mixer brush, and it pushes the pixels around and mixes them together, and it's a much nicer way to picking up color brushing. Try that.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. I'll try it.
So advanced people, you'll know what it is. If you're just new to Photoshop, you'll be like. Stick with it. It's a really good method, but it's a bit more advanced, and it teaches you a lot about how images are actually put together with color and detail and how they work together.
That's awesome. How's your dodge and burn method that you're new to you, dodge and burn method? Right.
So dodge and burn. So let's do another new layer. Let's do a new layer, and again we're going to put the mode to overlay, and fill it with soft light. This is the way that a lot of. By the way, back to frequency separation. Frequency separation was for many years professional retouchers. David Copperfield, right? Magicians never reveal their secrets. That was our thing. And I can't remember who it was, but one of the retouchers released a video to the masses showing everybody how to do frequency separation. Now it's all over YouTube and everybody does it. So we're all like, great. Because
I'm really grateful to whoever released the secret because I love it.
Most people use it for small things like skin, but
Yep.
Professional retouchers, we've been using it for things like, so if you want to extend a background, you can use that and bring in textures from other images and, grass. If you want to extend grass like 6 miles and not make it look like it's repeated, that's how you would do that. And we'd, delete something from a beach rather than just clone stamp everything and get repeats. You can do all your color work first and then bring in sand texture from other images. And that's how they use it for that kind of thing.
That's
anyway,
awesome.
Where are we? Dodge and burn. Right. So,
Dodge and burn.
Yeah. So some people use the dodge and burn tools on the base layer. If that's what you want to do, feel free. You're wrong, but feel free to do that. Because then you're destroying the pixels in your base image, and you never really want to destroy your base pixels. You want to keep those preserved. So now, obviously, I should caveat that if you're a wedding photographer and you've got 1,000 images to retouch, don't do any of this crap.
Right.
You want to be using Lightroom and doing quick edits. And only if the bride requests a 20-inch print would you go in and do retouching. But portrait photographers who are doing less than 10 images in a session, you should be doing non-destructive retouching so that you can go back and alter stuff if you need to. So dodge and burn on the base layer or a copy of the base layer, you're then flicking between two tools. I find that cumbersome and they're not very good. What most people have been doing is using a blank grey layer here, like I just created, set to overlay. And on a blank layer, when you paint white, it dodges. And when you paint black, it burns. Simple, right? Easy. So on something like eyes, which I like to do a lot, I like to paint white, not in the white areas here, not this. That's never do that. That's awful. Never ever do that. In here, in the iris, I like to pop the eyes by painting a little bit of white here. So we're dodging the irises of the eyes. Okay, and again, because it's non-destructive, it's on one layer. Okay. Now here's what I learned recently, which I don't know why I didn't think of this myself, and I wish I had done. And I could have taken credit for it today, but there are videos on the internet of people showing it, so I probably couldn't do that. There is no need to have a grey layer, because if you make a mistake, what you have to do is go back and pick up grey as your colour and then paint over it to get rid of it, right? Which is cumbersome and a pain in the ass. And you've got this whole pixel layer, which adds slightly to the size of your image. I mean, in the old days, that was a problem. Nowadays, with terabytes of information, nobody cares about the size of an image. But it's still a consideration. You've got this whole layer packed with pixels, and to delete something is a pain in the ass. Here's what you do. You just create a new layer, set it to overlay, but don't fill it with grey. Now it's just a blank layer. And you can still go in and paint white on that layer, and it does exactly the same thing. All right? It's only affecting the area, and you can do the same and paint black where you want it to dodge it. But because it's not grey, you can use your eraser tool and erase it. You don't need to find the layer and paint grey over it to get rid of it and only paint those bits you want to get rid of. You can just erase it and then start again. And you've only got those pixels that you actually want to alter on that layer. Genius. So it's one small tweak to the previously learned method, but it saves pixels and it saves time. And if you, like, I often make mistakes when I'm doing dodging on hair. I like to dodge highlights into hair. Sometimes it makes people look like they've got grey hair, which is really appropriate right now because everybody has. Except me. I haven't gone grey yet. It's falling out, but I haven't got grey yet. Well, certain parts of me are going grey, but we won't discuss that on a family show.
All right.
Sorry, Jason. I said I'd keep it mostly PG. Everybody knows what they get into when they put me on these things, so don't act like a surprise.
That's the part we like.
Yeah.
And I like to have a little bit of highlight on the lips and stuff, make them look glowy, and then
that's neat.
maybe we'll put a little bit of shadow in there, and then I like to accentuate. A little bit of cheek shadow there, things like that to make it look a bit more 3D. And if I'd made a mistake,
outsource too.
But if I'd done that on the previous method, I'd have to go in and paint grey back over that and make sure I didn't touch anything else. Now I can just go in with the eraser tool and erase that a little bit. Doing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. There you go. That's everything I know.
There you have it, everyone.
You wanted that was in some of my brain. That's it. Nothing else.
And there
Michael,
you have it.
Earlier, like what, if you had any room in your brain besides the beer to fit any actual knowledge. So I guess we know it's about, this much. So
yeah.
size of a walnut, I told him.
Well, I realised that recently because I'm trying to homeschool 2 kids, and one of them's 13, so he's doing science and stuff. And we looked at the work he had the other day, and he said, well, read that and see if you understand it. And I was like, nope. I haven't got a clue. I'm not reading it so that I do.
Go ask your mother.
Tell me what it is. Right.
That's my go-to. Go ask your mom.
Yeah. Math is the one. The way they're teaching them math. I know they're doing it for a reason, but it's like, God, just teach them to count first before you do all this.
Yeah. No, I'm thankful that my kids do pretty well in math, and my wife she does well in math because my 7th grade is already beyond my math skills. So
right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Awful.
Well, that was awesome, Mike. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I should also mention that Mike is a mentor on the group, and I think he's the perfect person if you've gotten into retouching and you're doing composites and you're kind of at a point where you're stuck or you just need some extra help. I know that I'm always in a place where like, I just have one question on how to do this, or I just want to get better at something. This is the point where you pull somebody like Mike in to help you, and doing it live and in person where you can bring your questions to it. And I know that he jokes around a lot, but he's really, really
only when there's an audience,
right? It's really just with the audience.
Like, hello, we're going to learn Photoshop today.
which is the way you want to learn, right? You want to learn from somebody that you're not going to be uncomfortable asking questions and whatnot. So he is available on the group, and if you're on our mailing list, you just got an email from us today with a nice Memorial Day special. So take advantage of it. Mike is here and willing and able. Yeah,
and also I'll tailor my speed to your level. So if you're advanced, we can skip a load of stuff.
Sure.
If you're new, we can go to basics. If you're intermediate, we can just go between us and stop me, like, you're going too fast, Mike, or what was that you just did? And if you come to me with specific questions beforehand, I can tailor what we're going to learn based on what you want to learn and show you a few different ways of doing different things. Because like I say, I know that I always joke that my way is the best way, which it is. You might find a different way works better for you. So it's useful to learn a couple of different ways of doing things.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
this was awesome.
Yeah, this is great.
Awesome.
This was awesome. And I think we can wrap here. There isn't a ton of people on here, so I'm not going to reach out for questions unless Michael.
Nobody loves me.
Well, there will be a lot of people that will watch this later, and if you guys have any questions, let me know now. But we're an hour in, so I don't want to take too much of your time. Everyone wants to get to their weekend. So
questions now are free. Once you're on a mentoring session, they cost you. That should be your tagline to get people onto the live ones. Questions are free during the live one.
And and we'll post this as well in the group Facebook page. And if you have questions for Mike, he's always around to answer them. And I think that's it. So once again, Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Good chatting with you.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Stay on the line.
Yep.
We'll talk. But I'm gonna say goodbye to everyone. Peace, everyone. Thanks for being part of Groups Group. We're going to be here every Friday, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. Next week, we have Sean Brown, right, Jen? Next week, we have Sean Brown coming on. He's going to talk to us about his high school seniors and dig into that a little bit more. And, for all of you guys that are out there watching this over the next couple of days, have a great Memorial Day weekend. Happy America Day. Happy Worker Day. I think Memorial Day is for workers, right? Yes, for workers. And for all of us that can't actually work, happy not work day. Right. So anyway, all right, guys, take care.
Thanks a lot, everybody.